The sun was setting over the quiet town of Maplewood, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gold. People hurried along the main street, heading home after a long day. Among them was a small boy named Ethan, just 8 years old, holding his school backpack tightly against his chest. He had just finished soccer practice and was waiting for his mom, who was running a little late. Ethan's eyes wandered around as he sat near the steps of an old building. Those steps had always seemed big to him, even though he was used to climbing them when he visited the library on weekends. Today, though, something unusual caught his attention. At the base of the stairs stood an elderly woman, frail and leaning heavily on her cane. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her grip, her face showing a mixture of determination and exhaustion. She looked at the steep stairs ahead of her as if they were a mountain too tall to climb. Ethan tilted his head, watching her carefully. People walked past her without stopping, too busy with their phones, conversations, and evening errands. Some glanced at her but quickly looked away. She seemed invisible in the rush of life, just another face in the crowd. But not to Ethan. He felt something inside him stir. Maybe it was the way his teacher always said, kindness doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be real. Without thinking twice, Ethan jumped to his feet, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and hurried toward the woman. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly, his small voice barely rising above the noise of the street. "Do you need help?" The elderly woman looked down at him, surprised. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, she just stared at the boy who was hardly taller than her walking stick. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, "these stairs are just a little too much for me. I was hoping someone might notice." Ethan smiled shyly and held out his hand. "I can help you. Don't worry, I am strong." The woman chuckled, the sounded gentle like a breeze rustling through leaves. She took his hand, her frail fingers curling around his tiny ones. Step by step, Ethan guided her up, carefully adjusting his pace so she could move without fear of falling. Passers-by began to notice. Some slowed down, watching the scene unfold. A few even stopped, phones halfway raised as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. In a world where people often rushed past one another, here was an 8-year-old boy offering the purest act of kindness without expecting anything in return. When they finally reached the top of the stairs, the woman's eyes glistened with tears. She squeezed Ethan's hand and whispered, "Thank you, young man. You've done more for me than you know. My legs aren't what they used to be, and I was so afraid I'd fall. You gave me courage." Ethan shrugged and grinned. "My mom says we should always help when we can, and I think you are really brave for trying." Unbeknownst to Ethan, someone had recorded the whole moment on their phone. A young woman standing nearby, touched by what she saw, uploaded the video later that evening with the caption, "This little boy's kindness restored my faith in humanity today." By morning, the video had spread across social media like wildfire. People all over the country watched in awe as the tiny boy guided the elderly woman up the stairs with such care and respect. Comments flooded in. Faith in humanity restored. His parents raised him right. This brought tears to my eyes. We need more Athens in this world. News outlets picked up the story, calling it a moment that melted hearts everywhere. The local TV station interviewed Ethan and his mom. When asked why he did it, Ethan's answer was simple: "She needed help, and I was there." That's what we should do for each other. The elderly woman, whose name was Mrs. Thompson, also became part of the story. She revealed that she had lived in Maplewood her whole life. Widowed and with her children living far away, she often felt lonely and unnoticed. That day, she had almost given up and turned back, thinking no one would care enough to stop. But Ethan changed everything. The community rallied around Mrs. Thompson after the story went viral. Neighbors began visiting her, helping her with groceries, and inviting her to community events. For the first time in years, she felt seen and valued. As for Ethan, his simple act of kindness turned him into a local hero. His school celebrated him in an assembly, not for becoming famous, but for reminding everyone that even small actions can have a big impact. The principal told the students, "Ethan showed us all that kindness has no age. Sometimes the smallest hands can carry the heaviest burdens for others." But what touched Ethan most wasn't the attention or the praise, it was the friendship he formed with Mrs. Thompson. He started visiting her on weekends, reading books from the library together, and listening to her stories about growing up in Maplewood. She would bake cookies for him, and he would draw her pictures of superheroes and soccer games. One afternoon, Mrs. Thompson said, "Ethan, you've given me more joy than I ever thought I'd feel again. You reminded me that even when the world seems cold, kindness can warm the heart." Ethan looked at her with wide, innocent eyes and replied, "And you remind me that grown-ups can be really cool friends." Their bond became a symbol of what the community could achieve when people cared for one another. The town of Maplewood even launched a Kindness Week in honor of the story, encouraging children and adults alike to do small acts of compassion for strangers. Months later, Ethan's story was still inspiring people far beyond his hometown. Social media continued to share the video, and teachers used it in classrooms to spark discussions about empathy. Parents showed it to their children, saying, "This is what it means to have a kind heart." The boy who once thought of himself as just an ordinary kid had unknowingly lit a spark of kindness across the world. And for Mrs. Thompson, what began as a simple climb up a flight of stairs turned into a journey of new friendships, community love, and renewed faith in humanity. On a quiet evening, long after the cameras had stopped rolling and the world had moved on to the next viral story, Ethan sat with Mrs. Thompson on her porch, sharing cookies. She looked at him with a smile full of gratitude and whispered, "You may never know how much you changed my life that day." Ethan, munching happily on a chocolate chip cookie, replied, "All I did was help you up the stairs." Mrs. Thompson shook her head gently. "No, Ethan, you helped me climb back into life." And in that simple truth, the power of kindness revealed itself again, not in grand gestures or headlines, but in the quiet, everyday choices of a little boy who believed helping was just the right thing to do.